Let's walk through the real current legal landscape around buying ammo in 2026 because it has genuinely changed in a couple of specific places, just not in the way that title implies. Quick thing before we get into it. I check ammunition and firearm law claims against actual statutes and actual court dockets before I put them in a script, not against whatever framing is generating the most clicks elsewhere. If that is useful, subscribe and turn on the bell. 2 seconds, and let's get into what is actually true. Let's start with the baseline, because most people genuinely do not know this, and it matters for understanding everything else. Federal law regulates who can buy a firearm far more heavily than it regulates who can buy ammunition. There is no federal background check requirement for buying ammunition anywhere in the country. Federal law prohibits sales to people already barred from owning firearms and separately bans armor-piercing ammunition. But beyond that, ammunition sales are almost entirely a state-by-state question, and only a small handful of states have layered their own background check or age requirements specifically onto ammunition purchases, separate from whatever rules apply to the firearm itself. California is currently the most active, most contested battleground on this exact question, and it is worth understanding the actual case, because it has real specific stakes rather than a vague nationwide claim. Since 2019, following the voter-approved Proposition 63, California has required a point-of-sale background check for every single ammunition purchase, whether in a store or shipped from out of state to a licensed in-state vendor for pickup. Olympic shooter Kim Rode, along with the California Rifle and Pistol Association, challenged this requirement in a case called Rode versus Bonta, arguing it violates the Second Amendment. In July of 2025, a 3-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit actually ruled the law unconstitutional. That ruling did not stick. California's Attorney General petitioned for the full Ninth Circuit to rehear the case with an 11-judge panel, a process called en banc review, and the court granted that request, vacating the original panel's ruling. Oral arguments in front of that full panel happened on March 25, 2026, in Pasadena. And as of this recording, no decision has been issued yet. The practical result is that California's background check requirement remains fully enforced right now, today, despite technically having already been ruled unconstitutional once, because that specific ruling was vacated pending the larger court's own review. This is worth sitting with for a second, because it is a genuinely confusing legal status that a vague headline entirely flattens. If you buy ammunition in California today, you still go through the exact same process you have gone through since 2019, show ID, pass the background check, pay the associated fee, walk out with your purchase. That has not changed despite a federal appeals panel already ruling against it once. Legal analysts following the case note that depending on how the en banc panel eventually rules, this could realistically end up in front of the Supreme Court. Though some observers believe California might actually prefer to accept a loss at the circuit level rather than risk the Ninth Circuit's reasoning becoming a nationwide precedent if the Supreme Court took the case and ruled against ammunition background checks more broadly. A genuinely interesting strategic calculation given how much broader impact a Supreme Court ruling would carry compared to one confined to the Ninth Circuit's own states. California is not alone in requiring this kind of check, though it is the most heavily litigated example. New York, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey also maintain some form of background check requirement specifically tied to ammunition purchases, separate from whatever background check applies to buying the firearm itself. New York's version predates California's, established back in 2013, requiring commercial ammunition transfers to run through a statewide licensing and record database. If you live in or regularly buy ammunition in any of these 6 states, this is not new information exactly, but it is worth confirming your specific state's current requirement directly, since the exact mechanics, what counts as a covered purchase, what identification is required, whether out-of-state shipments are affected, vary state by state even among this group of 6. Now here is the genuinely new development for 2026, and it comes from a state that has been at the center of several other major gun law stories already this year. As part of the same broad legislative package that produced Virginia's new assault weapons ban and its new rule against leaving a visible handgun in an unattended vehicle, Virginia also raised its minimum ammunition purchase age to 21, with identification verification required both at the point of sale and again at delivery for any shipped purchase, effective July 1st, 2026, alongside the rest of that same package. This specifically targets a gap that existed under prior federal law, where 18-year-olds could generally purchase rifle and shotgun ammunition even in states where handgun purchases required being 21, a gap Virginia's new law specifically closes for ammunition purchased within the state, regardless of what type of firearm that ammunition is intended for. There have also been federal legislative proposals over the years aimed at regulating ammunition more broadly nationwide, worth knowing about specifically because they explain where some of the more dramatic claims about a coming federal ammo ban actually originate, even though none of these proposals have become law. A bill called the Ammunition Modernization and Monitoring Oversight Act, generally referred to as the AMMO Act, has been introduced in Congress multiple times, most recently reintroduced by Democratic lawmakers, and would require federal licensing for ammunition sellers, mandatory background checks on ammunition buyers, and reporting requirements for bulk purchases. It has never passed, has not advanced significantly in the current Congress, and there is no indication it is close to becoming law as of this recording. If you have seen a claim that this bill, or something like it, already passed, that claim is inaccurate. It remains a proposal that has been reintroduced periodically for years without securing the votes to become law. So here is what I would actually tell you if you are trying to figure out your own real situation right now. If you live in California, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, or New Jersey, confirm your specific state's current ammunition purchase requirements directly, since California's situation specifically remains in genuine legal flux even though the requirement is currently still enforced. If you live in Virginia, understand that starting July 1st, you need to be 21 to purchase ammunition there, with identification checked both at sale and at delivery for shipped orders, a real, specific new requirement, not a vague nationwide claim. If you live anywhere else in the country, there is currently no federal background check requirement for ammunition purchases and no pending federal legislation close enough to passage to justify treating it as an imminent certainty, meaning the actual current rules governing your own ammunition purchases are very likely unchanged from where they stood a year ago. Step back and look at the actual state of ammunition regulation heading into the rest of this year. It is a genuinely undercovered area of gun law compared to firearm ownership itself, precisely because federal law treats it so differently, leaving almost the entire regulatory landscape to a small handful of states that have chosen to act. That patchwork, 6 states with background check requirements, 1 state that just raised its purchase age, and a federal proposal that keeps getting reintroduced without passing, is a considerably more specific and more useful picture than a single vague warning that ammunition is disappearing nationwide, and it happens to have the advantage of actually being true, checkable against real statutes and real court dockets rather than a title with no citation behind it at all. If this helped you separate the real specific rules from a vague alarmist claim, hit like so it reaches other people who saw that same title and wanted actual answers, and subscribe if you have not, because I will be covering the Road versus Bonta, ruling the moment the en banc panel actually decides it, along with any other state that follows Virginia's lead on ammunition purchase age. Tell me in the comments if you live in one of the 6 states with an ammunition background check requirement, because that tells me exactly how deep to go on your specific state's process next.